Welcome to Do Your Dinner Strawberries. I'm Anthony Reardon. I'm the Horticulture Small Farms Extension Agent here. Delving right in, I generally give some publication recommendations at the beginning of this. So K-State does have a publication specifically on strawberries, and a lot of this information came out of there, as well as the next one I'm going to reference. But it is officially, if you go to the KSRE bookstore, just type in MF598, and that will take you to strawberries, and you can get this. We also have physical copies here at the extension office. And as far as a bigger publication that you can use if you're producing strawberries or just home fruit in general, there's the Midwest Home Fruit Production Guide. This is a collaboration between several Midwestern universities. I think it's actually published itself out of Ohio State. We do have a couple copies of this as well available at the extension office, or you are, of course, able to purchase this online through Ohio, and it might actually be a little bit cheaper for you. So a quick overview of strawberries, because there's a lot of factors to cover with this. Strawberries are a crop that is going to generate very quickly for you. And what I mean by this is it's going to be like your beans, it's going to be like your cherry tomatoes or even your indeterminate tomatoes, where once the crop starts producing, you got to keep an eye on it and you got to stay on top of it because those harvest windows are going to be very frequent. Um, that said, they actually require very minimal space depending on how many plants you're trying to grow. Generally, one plant only needs about 1 foot of space, up to about 18 inches. That said, a single plant may produce up to 1 quart per plant. So if you have 2 dozen plants, that generally equates to feeding about a family of four. Um, Another thing to keep in mind, especially if you're trying to establish a strawberry patch, is that they produce best in their first year. And then the subsequent years, especially years 2 and 3, that's when you're going to start seeing less and less production on those plants. After year 3, it's actually recommended that the plants get replaced altogether, and we'll delve into that. So one of the first things I wanted to touch on is there's several differences between the types of strawberries that you're going to be working with. There's actually 3 different kinds, but I have June bearing versus ever bearing here because those are 2 of the more prominent. And so your June bearing, as the name suggests, they're going to be the ones that you're harvesting in June. These produce the season after they're planted. So say you planted these in September of last year, they would be harvested in June of this year. This is also the type of strawberry that's generally going to give you your largest yield per person. So if you're looking for ample production of the fruit itself, you may want to look at your June bearing. Ever bearing then is a type that produces smaller crops, but you're going to get a harvest both in late spring and in early fall. So if you're aiming for a variety where it's not necessarily in midsummer, then that you're wanting your strawberries, but in spring and fall, this would be a good option. You could also intermix the two, and that way you have strawberry production all the way from spring to fall. And then there's the third type, which is your day neutral varieties, and these produce throughout most of the season. And again, the yield itself is probably not going to be quite as big as your June bearing, but it is a good option for that. They're a little bit less common, a little bit less easy to find, but they do exist. So which ones are used as annuals? If you are familiar with like the commercial strawberry patches that there are around town, they use strawberries as annuals. So they don't have patches that come back year after year because they know that production isn't going to be as reliable year 2, year 3, and then they're just going to have to replant again anyway. So the ones that they are using for this annual production would be your June bearing varieties. They're planted in the fall, harvested in June, and then your day neutral varieties as well, which fruit in their first year, and they produce a full crop in one season. So they're a good option for that annual purpose. Not your everbearing varieties because again, the lower yields, and it's going to be a little bit less consistent in its fruit production. So this is important that I have marked on here. When you are selecting your strawberry types, you cannot tell visually the difference between June bearing and ever bearing and your day neutral varieties. So when you are at the store purchasing your plants, this is when you need to figure it out. Look at your labels, talk to the people that are running the store. They generally will have an idea, especially if you're at a commercial garden center that's specifically allocated to that. So just make sure that you're getting the type that you're looking for. As far as variety selection goes, this is directly from that first publication on strawberries that I showed you. There's obviously a lots of different varieties out there, cultivars rather, and there's several different factors with your varieties to be considering. There's ripening season, the yield itself, the berry size, freezing and dessert quality, and then even disease resistance. And they all kind of vary in their range. But depending on the qualities you're looking for, you can then zero those out and narrow down a variety you are wanting to work with. I did reach out to Kerry Rivard, who is our state fruit and vegetable specialist, and he did have a few different variety recommendations for us as well, specifically for your backyard garden type operations. So there is the day neutral varieties he recommended, and EV2 and Portola are the two ones with that. He said Portola is particularly tolerant of high temperatures, so that is something to keep in mind, especially with our hot summers here, humid summers, and they generally have good yields. Then your June bearing, the Chandler variety is the old reliable that several growers will go to in the area, and then Ruby June is a newly utilized variety that's very popular among local growers. So looking at your planting site, it is a full sun crop, so you need to be keeping in mind that you need that 6+ hours of direct sunlight a day. Your soil itself should be well draining because you don't want to encourage root rots. Also, having the fruit sit on muddy soil is more likely to encourage fruit rot and different types of diseases that are prone to infest this plant. There are several fungal diseases that are common to strawberries, so we'll mention that at the end here. But well draining is going to help you out with that scenario. Also, having them a little bit higher up, so don't have it in a lower lying area essentially, because if water is collecting there, it is going to rot. Also, the cold air will settle in that lower area, and frost kills blooms with strawberries. So that is something that we are going to mention a few different times in here, but you just have to keep in mind that frost protection is very, very important with this because the blooms are, or the buds are your blooms, which are then your fruits. So you have to protect those buds. Having an irrigation source is always going to be useful because it does need a regular moisture to it. A loamy to sandy soil is actually ideal for this because it does give you that well drained capacity. And then at least 2% organic matter. What the organic matter is going to do, it's essentially going to act like a sponge in there. It's going to allow some, drainage, but it's also going to retain moisture long enough so that can be absorbed by the plants. So it's going to kind of give you that happy medium soil texture. Um, Beginning amending in a year advance is also going to then help you out. Essentially, just amending that soil structure, making it so that it's an ideal place for the plants to go into directly. When you're particularly dealing, especially with those June bearing varieties or the ones that you're using as annuals, you're going to want an ideal soil from right off the bat because you don't necessarily have a ton of time for that soil structure to amend itself. And then you're going to want to till or cultivate the area for weed control. That said, try to minimize the tilling because soil structure and soil microbiome does play a factor in the health of all plants. So just make sure that your roots are able to expand and it's not super compacted, and that's essentially the soil can function as it needs to. So looking at planting strawberries, there's a soil you want to soil test the area and amend prior to planting as you are amending your soil. The ideal pH is going to be 5.8 to 6.5, so right there in that slightly acidic range. Plant in mid-March through April. So this is ideally right after your frost threats are on the tail end, at least, right? And you probably aren't going to have buds on your plants yet, so this would be a good time to get them to start rooting out and flushing out before those buds start developing. Vigorous plants are going to be ideal. So, well, obviously, but dormant plants are still possible. So, I guess what I mean by that is the ones that you are planting into the ground, the more vigorous kind of plugs that you can find to incorporate are going to be the better performing plants. You can use dormant plants, but it's going to take them a while to establish. Also, you're going to want to make sure the roots aren't dried out when those are being incorporated. Um, and then as far as any other tips with, planting the plants themselves, you just want to make sure you're removing any dead leaves and then prune the actual lower one third of the roots because that is going to instigate more growth of those roots. But try to keep it to one third at that so that you're not removing too many of those absorbive lateral roots. When it comes to spacing, there's a few different things I want to mention here. So with your in-ground strawberry patches, generally you just need about 12 inches between the plants. When it comes to row spacing, you want at least 12. Sorry, lost my train of thought there. You want at least 12 to 18 inches between the rows. And then in raised beds, actually, 12 inches to 15 inches is ideal because it's a little bit different. And so when you're watering your strawberries, you need extra water as fruit develops. So 25% to 50% increased production is actually seen if you're adding more water to your strawberries when they are producing. So you need to keep in mind this is not time to be adding extra water. And enough extra water to actually go 6 inches to 10 inches deep. For the first year plants, moisture is critical. So again, you can use them as annuals, but there are some that you can perennialize. That first year of establishment, you're going to have shallow roots. You need at least 1 inch of water per week or 2 inches of water per week in your hotter months like July and August. That said, don't apply it faster than the ground can absorb it, because that is going to instigate disease issues for you and potentially root rot. So, gradually water and get to those markers. Then when you're harvesting itself, it's generally pretty easy to tell when a fruit is ripe. But essentially, if it's still white or green, that is an indication it is not ready yet. So even if it's got, a white cap on it still, that means it's not quite ripe. When it's fully red, that's when it's ready to be picked. Pick every other day once it starts producing. Sometimes if it's especially hot weather out, you may be picking every day. And then you'll want to actually refrigerate these immediately because they'll start to break down as soon as you get them off the plant. And Chelsea will delve more into that as well, I believe. So a few more considerations. Strawberries are self-pollinating, so you actually only need one variety in your patch if that's what you prefer. The fruit buds form when day length shortens, so September, October. So if you're not planting as annuals and you are planting as perennials, those fruit buds will actually already be there. You must protect the buds and blooms from frost. So frost blankets, row covers, cloches, those are what's going to help you out. So also just burying the plants and mulch over the winter months is going to help you out. And then fall fertilization, irrigation. Again, if you're perennializing, or even if with your June berries, I suppose you would be planting ideally in September. Um, you need to account and plan for fall fertilization and irrigation to help with that bud development. And so when you are fall fertilizing, as I just mentioned, spring bearing develops buds for next year, September, October. So fertilize in August. August is the ideal time. A nitrogen application early to mid-August to stimulate growth. That would be a quarter pound of your 1600 or ammonia per 25-foot row, or there's these other equivalents on here as well. Essentially, it's you need to get a nitrogen source to those plants to help them produce. So again, looking at strawberry patch longevity, as I mentioned, they're going to be not producing quite as well after the first year. Second year and third year, they should still produce some for you at least. But after the year three, the weeds are going to begin to encroach and they're going to start competing with the plants. Disease is going to be building up. Pests are going to be building up. So essentially, you're just getting too much competition and pest issues after year three. And it's best to just rejuvenate the entire garden and start over. So between years, however, you can still till and hoe the rows for 10-inch wide plants. So that is your rejuvenating cuts on year two and three. You cut them back to about 10 inches wide, and that will help them stay healthy and productive throughout those second and third years. Then a lot of people do try to grow strawberries in containers as well. You need a pot that is at least 12 inches wide and 12 inches deep. Well-draining potting mix, just as you would have in the soil, not a potting mix, but a well-draining soil. Again, full sun, regular watering, and then balanced slow release fertilizer because they are heavy feeders. So something like a 10-10-10, a 5-10-10 fish emulsion would be a organic option. Um, so those are all factors that are going to help you with your plants. And keep in mind, if you're not really seeing a ton of blooms or you're having fruiting issues, phosphorus or extra phosphorus might help you out as well. If you can mulch your pots, this will also help because again, it's moisture retention, it's keeping pests away. So definitely still consider it in this scenario. Trim dead leaves and runners, just to keep all of your energy focused towards the plants that are producing. And then even rotating your pots for light balance is going to help with that fruit production. And you will see a lot of other structures in gardens when it comes to strawberries specifically because they are so compact, they can be incorporated into a lot of things. So there are strawberry pyramids that are quite common and also strawberry barrels. You see them on the left and the right here. Just keep in mind with these that they do dry out more quickly because that soil is exposed to that above ground air. And then because of that, they require more water and they also require more winter protection because they're going to be subject to frost or not, well, yes, frost, but also just wind chills. And then everbearing and day neutral varieties are actually going to be your best for this scenario because um, they will be producing the most for you. A few potential pests. So there's strawberry leaf rollers, which you see on the top left here. It's a caterpillar. Any kind of caterpillar, generally, when you're seeing it in the garden, you can use Bacillus thuringiensis, which is an organic method of attacking those. I believe it's bacteria. So that is a way to manage that. White grubs you may be seeing in older plantings as well. If that's the case, it's probably time to move that planting somewhere else or rejuvenate that planting and get the grubs out before you replant. Tarnished plant bugs, which you see on the bottom left here, are a brown insect that tend to feed on the fruits and leaves. A neem oil or insecticidal soap will help you there, and then strawberry slugs as well. And with your slugs, diatomaceous earth will help you out. Potential diseases. I didn't even bother getting photos of all the diseases here because, as you can see, there are a lot of them. But it says, anthracnose, powdery mildew, fungal root rot, botrytis, black rots. Pretty much almost all of these are fungal diseases. So with your fungal diseases, generally speaking, there's going to be a copper fungicide that you can use. Otherwise, plant sterilization and removal is an option. Moisture reduction and temperature control might be an option, but again, you kind of need that moisture to help the fruits produce as much as they can as they are producing. So, best case scenario, just reach out to the extension office with a photo, and we can help specifically diagnose the issue you're dealing with, so we can give you a specific recommendation. And something fun before I toss this over to Chelsea here. I'm delving a little bit into botanics this week. So, did you know, botanically speaking, strawberries aren't actually berries, but their seeds are nuts. So, a berry has its seeds on the inside of the fruit. So, the strawberry itself is actually an aggregate accessory fruit because the seeds are on the outside. And then these seeds or what we see as seeds on the fruits, are actually called achenes, and they are shells that have the actual seeds within them. So that makes them a nut. So there's our daily botanics lesson, or our monthly botanics lesson. And I will open it to questions real quick before I toss it to Chelsea. All right, Chelsea, they're all yours.
All right. Let's get the slideshow going here. Okay. Feel free to put your questions in the chat for Anthony so you don't forget them. We will have time at the end as well for that. So, as Anthony said, my name is Chelsea. I am the Nutrition, Food Safety, and Health Agent. I am a registered dietitian and cover all things related to what do you do with food after you have grown it? How do you preserve it? How do you eat it? And why do we want to grow these certain foods for nutritional benefit? So, strawberries, we probably all know that strawberries are really a nutrition powerhouse. Most of our fruits and vegetables are, but berries in specific are a nutrition powerhouse. And so, we're going to talk about 1 cup of half strawberries and what that nutrition looks like. So, overall, they're a fairly low calorie food, as 1 cup of halved strawberries has about 50 calories and 12 grams of carbohydrates. So, they are one of the lower carbohydrate type berries and fruits in general. So more of our tropical fruits are going to be our more higher carbohydrate. Think about your mangoes, your pineapples. They're going to have higher carbohydrates and higher sugars in general. Generally speaking, most fruits are low in protein, but they are high in fiber. So here we have 1 cup of half strawberries is about 3 grams of fiber. We need anywhere from 21 to 35 grams of fiber per day, depending on our age and our gender. So that kind of gives you a general idea. So 1 cup of half strawberries for breakfast will give you about 12% of your daily needs for your fiber. Again, all fruit has sugar in it. However, we know that this is a natural form of sugar. And so this has about 7.5 grams of sugar. Vitamin C is another important component to most of our fruits. Vitamin C here, we can see it's over 100% of our daily vitamin C needs. 8 strawberries will equal the amount in an orange. And so as we're kind of wrapping up winter season here in the cold temperatures, you might still try to prevent illness. And so you may be drinking orange juice or having oranges to get your vitamin C, which we know is an important component to supporting our immune health. However, strawberries are another great option to make sure that you're getting that vitamin C intake. They also have potassium, manganese, and they are 91% water. So they are a really nutrient dense fruit, as we think about really 9% of the fruit itself is the flesh and the other components, where 91% is water. And we'll talk a little bit about that as we move forward. So some other health benefits, again, we know that strawberries are usually that bright, rich red color. And when we think about the benefits of our fruits and vegetables, the brighter the color, really the more nutritional benefit it may provide for us. And so strawberries are really rich in antioxidants, specifically the anthocyanins, which give it that red, rich color. Anthocyanins have been shown to help improve your blood oxidant status, decrease oxidative stress, which is anything from the environment. Your body gets oxidative stress when you exercise, when you're taking in poor substances like alcohol, or when you're exposed to pollutants or charred meat. So we get oxidative stress in a variety of ways. So this helps to prevent some of that oxidative stress. It reduces inflammation. Chronic inflammation in the body has been shown to may lead to diabetes, heart disease, other chronic conditions. So by reducing inflammation in the body, it helps overall as well our health status. And that's really an important function of our berries, not only our strawberries, but all of our berries. It may improve your vascular function, which is your heart and blood flow, improve your blood lipid profile. So that is looking at your cholesterol, and it may reduce the harmful oxidation of your bad cholesterol. There's been lots of different studies looking at the benefits of strawberries. The challenge a lot of times with nutritional studies is we don't always eat the same thing every day. Excuse me. We have a variety of health conditions that may impact it. And so really evidence and nutritional studies are often hard to have concrete evidence. However, this study looked at 4 to 12 weeks of freeze-dried strawberry supplements. Participants experienced a significant decrease in risk factors, including their bad cholesterol, inflammatory markers, and oxidative stress. And we're going to talk a little bit more about freeze-dried strawberries. But anytime we're talking about produce, really the freshest produce you can find, the higher the nutritional status. So we know that antioxidants and specifically don't like heat, light, and really exposure over time. And so when we talk about growing your own produce, it's really that's kind of the benefit is when you harvest it, you're at the peak of its produce, it's the peak of its freshness, and it's also the peak of its nutrition. So, really making sure that we have the freshest strawberries is going to provide us the most nutritional benefit. So, why we eat strawberries, again, that really the health benefit, and they're super tasty. When we think about sugar and kind of our natural desire to want sweet things, strawberries and our berries are great options that are sweet, but also at the same time don't provide a ton of added sugars. They provide no added sugars, but don't provide a lot of sugar in general. So red strawberries do get their pigmentation from anthocyanins. However, you might see white strawberries, and these are more commonly, you might find them in grocery stores. Sometimes I haven't seen them here specifically, but if you are out and about to other parts of the country, other parts of the world, you might find these white strawberries. And so basically, they're just missing that protein that turns them red. Nutritionally speaking, they're pretty similar otherwise with vitamins and minerals as your red strawberries. It's just they have a little bit less of that anthocyanins and they're missing that component that turns them red. Our berries are naturally sweet. And interestingly, the white strawberries are going to have more of a tropical flavor. And what I haven't ever personally had them, but what I've heard is that they have a more kind of pineapple flavor and are generally sweeter. So if you do come across them and you have the opportunity to try them, definitely give them a try as a different type of strawberry. But nutritionally speaking, they're about the same taste profile. There's going to be slight differences with the white being a little bit sweeter than your red ones. So we haven't really talked much about allergies in any of our other Dig Your Dinners, but allergies are obviously a common concern. Most of our fruits and vegetables are not what we call in the big nine, which are the nine most common allergies. However, strawberry allergies do exist, although not quite as common. With our strawberry allergies, it's actually most common in people who have a birch pollen allergy. And so they're very similar. The allergen that kind of causes the symptoms is found in both of your strawberries and your birch pollen. Symptoms generally appear within kind of that 5 to 15 minutes. And generally, with your strawberry allergies, they're not life threatening. You kind of get the itchy mouth, maybe your throat becomes a little itchy, you might have a little inflammation. And so, really, this is more commonly known as oral allergy syndrome or OAS. So, interestingly, this allergen does not actually survive cooking. So, sometimes you might find if you've had a strawberry and you have had kind of an itchy mouth or your throat became itchy as a raw strawberry, but you've had strawberry jam and haven't had a problem with it, that might be an indication of this oral allergy syndrome where you can tolerate cooked foods because it kind of kills that allergy stimulating product in the strawberry. Therefore, if you do have oral allergy syndrome, this is common in a different variety of fruits and vegetables. The cooked version is often more tolerated than the raw version. So as Anthony said, storing the strawberries, they are one of the berries and one of the fruit in general that are often very finicky. And before you know it, you have moldy strawberries in the back of your refrigerator that you either just got from the store or you just harvest them or got them from the farmer's market and you don't know what to do to make sure that they last longer. So the interesting thing is strawberries will not continue to ripen. So as Anthony said, you do want to wait until it's at the peak of the ripeness to pick it. If you pick a strawberry too soon, you're going to miss out on some of the nutrition and it's not going to be as sweet because those natural sugars haven't had enough time to develop. So make sure that the berries are a nice red color before picking them for taste as well as nutrition. To prevent spoilage and mold growth during storage, you really want to make sure that you wash them just before they're prepared. It is a common practice to make it easy for food prep to wash everything, cut everything, and have it ready to go. But your berries in particular, like your strawberries and your raspberries, are very sensitive to water, and it's going to actually make them degrade faster. And so you want to try to make sure that you wash them right before they're prepared. Another tip is not to soak the berries. Again, that soaking just kind of allows more water to come into that berry, thus fastening the degradation process. When you're using washing methods, do not use any detergent, soaps, or bleach to wash your fresh strawberries. Of course, it will change the taste of the fruit, and obviously we don't want to use any of those because they're not made to be ingested. You do find some kind of over-the-counter fruit and veggie washes that are out there. Research has shown that they're really not any more beneficial at getting bacteria or your pesticides off of your produce compared to just your normal washing. So as you get strawberries from the grocery store, they're typically stored in a box with holes. And as you can see on the right-hand side, if you're harvesting them from your garden yourself, you might not have one of these nice containers. So you can definitely store it in any type of box that has, and either maybe cover it with plastic wrap and have some holes in that plastic wrap. The temperature is also key. And so the colder your refrigerator is, the better the storage is going to be. So if your refrigerator is hovering around that 42-degree mark, we know that that can increase the likelihood of bacteria growing, as well as speeding up the process of degrading fruits and vegetables. So we do want to make sure that we are keeping our refrigerator cold. 40 degrees and less is really key. And you'll want to use them within 1 to 2 days after you wash and kind of take the green tops off. For longer storage, leaving the stems on and keeping them whole is going to be best. There was some kind of studies that were done just from general consumers that showed that cutting it up and taking the stems off sped the process up for the drying out and the degradation of those strawberries. Keeping them dry is really, really key. And so I'm going to talk about on the next slide really how we can dry them to make sure that they stay nice and dry. And the other key that sometimes people often do, and this happened to me recently, I had green beans in my refrigerator and I noticed one of them was kind of moldy, but I didn't get it out in time and then it spreads. So you do want to routinely check your strawberries, even from the grocery store when you get them home. Go ahead and take them out of the container, sort through them, toss out any soft and moldy ones because those, if they're left in there, will spread and will make the other ones kind of soften and become moldy faster. So really making sure you go through them and don't just assume that when you go through them, when you get it home from the store, that it's safe to not go through them again. You'll want to check them every couple of days just to make sure that none of them are getting soft and moldy and to throw them out if they do. So the other thing that is quite common, and you might see it in social media or in different blog posts in different areas, is people say that a vinegar solution will keep your berries a lot longer. And so what they use is it's about usually 1 part vinegar, a white vinegar, to 3 parts cold water. And what they'll do is they'll put the berries in, they'll kind of soak them, let them sit, and then they'll rinse them with cool water after and thoroughly dry them. The idea is what people believe is that this vinegar solution will get rid of and kill any of those potential bacteria that's going to cause mold or cause your produce to soften and to become, not a good quality quicker. So that vinegar solution has been thought to kill that. There's really not conclusive evidence to say that is true or not true, but some people do have personal experience saying that it does work. Again, the key is the drying piece. And so if you have a salad spinner at home, I usually always encourage people to use your salad spinner for more than just salad. It's a great tool to actually dry your produce. So you wash your strawberries, put them in the salad spinner, line it with a few paper towels, and you're going to gently spin them. That extra momentum from the salad spinner does help to get a little bit more of that extra water off compared to just laying them out on a towel without giving them that kind of spin cycle. So think of it as the wash machine for your produce, and it just helps to wring out all that extra water before you kind of lay them out and put them in the refrigerator. A couple other key things with storage is you do want to store them in a single layer as possible. So when you get them from the store, they're typically kind of bunched up on top of each other, as you can see in those photos. But that pressure, they're a very soft fruit. And so that pressure, even though you might not think it's much, will cause where they're pushing against each other to soften a lot quicker. So if you can, it's best to put them in a single layer or only about 2 layers deep. So there's not a lot of pressure pushing on them, and the bottom ones won't get as soft as if they were left just kind of all piled on top of each other like that. Some other people say that storing them in an airtight container has worked for them. Again, no conclusive evidence to say that that does in fact prove and improve the storage life of it. But as we know, that error can sometimes cause produce to go bad quicker. And so by putting that airtight container, this might be more beneficial for shorter term storage versus longer term storage. But the other key thing is that moisture. And so definitely storing your strawberries on paper towels, and then to swap out those paper towels every couple days, because that paper towel is going to absorb that liquid that is coming off of those strawberries. And then you'll just want to toss it and replace that. Preserving strawberries, there are no home canning methods for whole strawberries. You will find some other whole berries that are approved and that there are steps to go through for preserving them using a pressure canner or a water bath, depending on what it is. However, strawberries tend to lose their color and become very mushy when they are canned as whole strawberries. Usually it's recommended to make a syrup, jam, or another soft spread with your strawberries if you do want to preserve them using a canning method. Preserving strawberries is also great for dehydration. So you can drain them using your salad spinner. You're going to just slice them into about 1/2 thick inch pieces. The thing with strawberries compared to some other fruit is you really don't need any other pre-treatment. So generally when you're dehydrating other fruits, you might need an ascorbic acid or lemon juice treatment to kind of keep that color and preserve the quality and texture, but you don't need that with strawberries. So you could just slice them, put them on your dehydrator. You're going to dehydrate them until they are basically no moistures in them. They might be slightly pliable, but they're not going to be sticky or tacky. You can kind of fold it in half and it shouldn't stick to itself. And then the other key to know when strawberries are fully dried is you put them in a little glass jar, go ahead and give them a shake. And if they kind of make a rattling noise when they're shaking, they're hitting the sides of the jar and each other, and that indicates that they're dry enough. You do want to make sure that fruit is fully cooled before you store to prevent that moisture buildup from the heat inside the jars. Another common way of preserving strawberries is freeze-dried. If you have a freeze-dry machine, great. They are quite expensive, so not a lot of people have a freeze-drying capacity within their own household. It's more of a commercially done product. There's a lot of freeze-dried candy out there in the market, but definitely I recommend doing your freeze-dried fruits. Freeze-drying is a form of dehydration that removes the water content. And what happens, it basically turns it from ice to vapor. There's a 3-step process, and this 3-step process actually preserves the nutrition value, taste, and appearance while extending its shelf life. So freeze drying is actually considered a high quality dehydration method. It preserves more nutrients than the other kind of heat dehydration method. And this because, as I mentioned, antioxidants and certain vitamins and minerals don't like heat. And so when we think about our dehydration usually happens about 135 to 145 degrees Fahrenheit. The freeze-dry method uses actually the opposite and uses sub-zero temperatures to turn that ice to vapor. And so you really are keeping a lot of those antioxidants and a lot of those anthocyanins and other nutritional qualities that are lost in that heat drying method. But again, it's expensive. Not everybody will have this home food preservation method, but if you find freeze-dried strawberries out in the grocery stores, they're a great option to getting some of that nutritional quality when maybe fresh strawberries aren't available in season. Recently, I actually just used freeze-dried strawberries for Valentine's Day. We did an activity and I blended up the freeze-dried strawberries in my food processor into really fine powder, and then I mixed it into some cream cheese, and I used strawberry cream cheese on some crackers for some kids. And so I'm getting some of that same nutrition quality, the anthocyanins and the antioxidants in that cream cheese instead of just the artificially strawberry flavor. So it's a great substitution to use as a coloring to your frostings and your cream cheese and other things like that. And even your cookies if you're adding it to the batter. And then you can freeze individual berries. You can freeze them either whole or you can wash them and slice them. Again, you will want to wash the berries, but draining them well and rinsing them or using your salad spinner is really key. Usually when we recommend when you're freezing any type of berry or individual fruit or vegetable, you'll want to place it on a single baking sheet and kind of do a flash freeze first so that when you push them, if you don't do that, you're going to put all your berries in one bag and it's basically just going to freeze into one big clump. So by flash freezing them individually first, you're going to allow them to be able to pull out a few at a time as you need them. Berries can also be frozen, making jams and jellies. So you can go ahead and use frozen berries in any of those products that you might be making. So if you have a surplus and you can't get all of your jams, jellies, syrups, cobblers made, you can go ahead and freeze your berries and then use them after the fact to make those products. It's great. I do that with my tomatoes. I generally don't have enough berries to do that, but if you do have a surplus of berries, go ahead and freeze them and then use them later to make your special snacks and foods and things. You can also go ahead and freeze your berries sweetened if you prefer that, depending on what you're going to use it for. This is a less common method just because it involves more steps than just easily putting it into the freezer, but you certainly can add a combination of sugar or syrup to your berries, and it can be used then later for sweetened products. So moving on to, we have 4 recipes here for you. If you don't want to do dehydrated apples by themselves, making a dehydrated fruit leather is a great option to use some of those berries. So here we have a strawberry apple fruit leather, and so it's just going to take fresh berries. You're going to cook them a little bit to soften them, and then you're going to puree them in a blender. So it's a nice consistency of a liquid consistency. You're going to mix that with unsweetened applesauce. You can certainly just do the berries by itself, but the applesauce can extend how much you end up getting as a final quality. And also we know that unsweetened applesauce is a reasonably priced food. And some people say that the texture is also a little bit better. It's not quite as what's the word I want to use? Quite as hard. It kind of softens it a little bit to make it a little more enjoyable fruit leather. And then you can use honey or any other type of liquid sweetener of your choice. And then a little bit of that lemon juice or absorbic acid is just going to help to keep the color. So you mix that all together. You can certainly do this in an oven. If you do not have a dehydrator, you can just use a baking sheet and line it with parchment paper or a silicone baking mat, and then dehydrate it on the lowest possible setting of your oven. A lot of ovens don't go quite that low. So the other trick is to just kind of prop the door open just slightly to let some of that heat out so it's not quite as hot. Or you can even put a fan on by your oven to help pull out some of that heat, which will keep that temperature a little bit lower. When leather is done, it's going to be slightly kind of not sticky and tacky, and no indentions to remain when you lightly touch it. And then you can just kind of roll it in the parchment paper and store it in Ziploc bags or an airtight container. This one is another one of my favorites, using your berries to make kind of a sweet treat. And so it's yogurt bark with berries. Basically, all it is non-fat Greek yogurt. You can use any type of flavored Greek yogurt. You could use plain Greek yogurt and sweeten it with vanilla or other flavorings of your choice as well. And then you sprinkle a cup of berries. I've done straight strawberries. I've done a combination of blueberries, strawberries, anything that you would like. And then you add some other toppings on top of it, whether it's unsweetened cocoa, coconut, chopped nuts, granola, chocolate chips, really whatever your heart desires, you can kind of mix and match, which makes it great that it never gets boring. So you're going to just line your baking sheet with parchment paper. You're going to spread the yogurt across the parchment paper to make a very thin layer, about a 1/4 inch thick. And you certainly don't need to spread it all the way to the sides of the pan. Just spread it as far as you can until you get that 1/4 inch thick across. And then you're just going to evenly sprinkle everything on top. Store in the freezer for a couple hours until it's set. And then you'll take it out of the freezer and you can kind of use your hands to break it apart, or you use a knife and cut it into pieces. And then you just store it back in an airtight container in the freezer and just pull out a couple pieces when you want kind of a sweet, cool snack In these sub-temperature degrees right now, you're probably not thinking of wanting a cool snack, but this is a great summer treat as well. And then I talked about preserving strawberries, that they don't work well for whole strawberries, but you can certainly use your strawberries whole and make homemade strawberry syrup, which goes great. Pancakes, ice cream, just kind of a nice staple thing to keep in your pantry. So here's kind of your recipe here with using fresh or again, those frozen berries if you put your extra berries in the freezer and want to make the homemade strawberry syrup at a later time. And then the last one, these bars were made last year for our annual Johnson County Extension Foundation fundraiser. And it is gluten-free, berry easy jam bars. However, you can substitute out regular flour for the gluten-free flour because we use the 1-to-1 substitution in this recipe, but you can use regular baking flour, all-purpose flour, instead of the gluten-free flour, and the exact same measurement of 2¼ cups. So it has our flour, oats, some of our sugars, and our butter and salt in kind of the crust. And then the filling, you're going to have your strawberries. Again, any type of berry would work if you wanted a pound of blueberries, strawberries, and blackberries, or if you had any type of combination. Because this is strawberries, we just stuck strictly with the strawberries. And then it has kind of like a crumble on top. So the directions are kind of there as well. Again, this recording is always sent out after, so you can get the recipes at that time if you're not able to take a photo or capture all the details right now. And with that, here is my contact information. We have our In Good Health monthly newsletter that comes out with nutrition information and a recipe of the month. And if you have any other nutrition or health questions related to any of your produce, you can contact us at this email foodhelp@joco.gov. All right, so let's see what questions we got here. Anthony, you want to start covering some of the produce ones, and I'll come back to the vegetable or the nutrition ones.
Yeah, I can start answering some questions. Quite a few here, so I will start from the top. Chelsea, are you hearing me okay? Okay. So first here from Carmen, it says, if you grow in raised beds, how do you rejuvenate? You'd still follow that rule of cutting them to about 10 inches back. So the plant itself, make it so that it's about 10 inches wide all the way around. And so that would help you with getting that rejuvenating growth out of those plants. Any kind of runners that you see coming off of those, as well as spindly older leaves, those you can prune out as well. Kind of just want to try to concentrate the plant's energy to the healthiest parts of the plant. Jeanette here asks, will you be sending out the PowerPoints? Also, are you saying that I won't get a crop my first year? Okay, so first part, yes, we can attach the PowerPoints as a PDF to the recording email that goes out to you all. So we'll make a note to do that. And then as far as the crop your first year, it's going to depend on the type of crop or the type of strawberry plant that you go with. So your June bearing specifically, those are the ones that have to be planted in the fall so that you can get a crop in June of the next year. Now your everbearing and your day neutral varieties, those are the ones that will produce the same year that you plant them. Janet asks, how do you get rid of roly-polies in the soil? They eat my strawberries. Diatomaceous earth is what you use for slugs, and I would say that probably work pretty well with your roly-polies as well. That would be my best recommendation. Really, roly-polies, they're actually considered beneficials because they break down all of the organic matter that's in the soil, but they do tend to attack your crops sometimes. So they like places where they can aggregate, and there's not really a ton you can do about that in a strawberry scenario because everything's so dense. But I'd say your diatomaceous earth would be your best option. Karen asks, can't you start new plants from the runners? I purchased plants 10 years ago and have been doing this last summer's heat into my plants, so I'm starting over with new plants. Yes, you can. I would say with that, you just need to really encourage the healthiest, most vigorous plants that you can produce from those runners. So keep in mind that when you have in-ground strawberry stands, again, they're only trying to last for 10 years, or I'm sorry, not 10 years, 3 years. So spending ample amounts of time trying to get those runners to then grow into a fleshy plant, it might be better to utilize that limited amount of time just by planting new fresh plants that are already fully grown. But it's not impossible. I'd say just watch your fertilizer, make sure you're getting a lot of nitrogen to them so they can establish. The next one here is from Bobby, and that is actually on nutrition. Do you want to answer that one, Chelsea? Okay. Yeah, oh yeah, there's a couple more here about plants. I'll hit those first. So, do tarnish bugs move really fast? Yes, generally they do move very quickly. So, if you've seen something similar in there, that's probably what you were seeing. Also, they fly as well, so something to keep in mind. And then will runners produce? Yes, runners are a factor with strawberries, so they will produce runners.
And then the two nutrition questions. There was a question about how does the nutrition of frozen strawberries compare to freeze-dried strawberries? When I was looking up the nutrition information, so I get all of my nutrition information from the USDA's. They have a food database, and so they have done the nutrient analysis and research of a variety of produce as well as different food products. They actually did not have any freeze-dried strawberries in their database to kind of compare. Really to make sure it was apples to apples nutritionally. So I cannot say specifically how frozen strawberries and freeze-dried strawberries might compare. There is going to be some slight differences because obviously freeze drying still changes the texture and kind of the composition of that fruit, right? So it's a lot harder. It's obviously shrunken down quite significantly. So you're going to use some of those lose some of those cellular walls, as well as potentially some nutritional losses. However, when you compare it to our dehydrated using heat, that is obviously you lose a lot more in that heating process than the freeze drying process. So nutritionally, I can't say specifically how they might vary, but there is going to be some slight differences. However, both are going to provide nutrition and are going to be a beneficial incorporation into your diet. And then there was a question of, can you dry fruit without a dehydrator? Absolutely, you can still dry your fruit in your oven. It would be kind of the same principles and concept of dehydrating with your leather. You'll just want to make sure that your oven is set to the lowest temperature possible. Usually those are kind of 170 to 175. Our recommended drying temperature is 145. So again, try to prop open that oven door just slightly. And if you have a fan that can kind of circulate that heat, that will also help to make sure that your fruits or vegetables, whatever you are drying in the oven, aren't going to burn and they're going to dry at a nice slow pace, giving you the ultimate highest quality product.
Yeah, we have one more question on the growth side here. It says, where do you purchase a high nitrogen fertilizer? Generally, any of your garden stores are going to have those more specific types of fertilizers. So if you're looking for a very specific range of I want this much nitrogen and this much phosphorus and potassium, I'd try your specific garden stores, the ones that are specifically aimed at selling garden supplies and plants. That said, even your bigger box store garden centers, they're going to have a high nitrogen fertilizer. You can substitute technically even your types of lawn fertilizers, so long as those numbers are matching up. Do we have any more questions from the crowd? Okay, well, we thank you all so much for your time today. As Chelsea mentioned, we will get this sent out to you guys in an email. We will also include the PDFs of our slides as well for you, and it should be on YouTube very soon as well. So thanks for joining us.